When my wife dropped me off at Logan this morning at 5 a.m., she said, look, if you're going to start talking about Dick Lennon, stay calm and keep your blood pressure down. And she said, no Michael Jackson jokes, which I wanted to do. And avoid your lame stuff about, you know, we traded Manny Ramirez for Lennon. But it's okay for me to mention that many U.S. bishops, and in all candor I have to include your ordinarians grouping, have become weapons of mass, capital M, mass destruction. Because as we move around, tout le monde est paese, the whole world is like my village. We're seeing this again and again. I want to start, and I will be mercifully brief, by trying to be factual about the Boston experience. And the all-purpose soundbite, which some of you have already suffered through, is that Catholic Boston is the California of Catholic America. It is the place where stuff happens a few years before it happens elsewhere. And the last 5 years are my case in point. Clergy sexual abuse has been going on literally for centuries, but the public awareness of it really exploded, appropriately enough, on the day of the Epiphany, January 6, 2002, in Boston, when the Boston Globe was still a newspaper. And that story, a lot of us thought, well, yeah, a few bad apples. That story ran for a year. About 2 years later, not surprisingly, we in Boston experienced the first tidal wave of massive parish closings. The numbers are important, at least in my world, but they put things in perspective. At the time in the Archdiocese of Boston, we had 357 open parishes. In one day, it was announced that 83 of the 357, that's about 23.x%, were going to be suppressed, which is the most drastic technique under canon law. Without yet getting too far off the rails, it is undeniable that the architect of that program was your very own bishop, when at the time he was number 2, Vicar General and moderator of the Courier in the Archdiocese of Boston. Now you have him, we don't.
How did you get rid of it?
I will touch on that in a minute, but it took about 2 years of efforts to trade him. And you know, we got Manny and also, okay. An auxiliary bishop of Boston, Borre, good guy, at a convocation of all priests about a year ago, addressed reconfiguration and said to about 400 or 500 priests, this is a disaster which we will never repeat. So that's a fellow bishop's take on the legacy that Lennon has left behind. But a few brief facts. 5 years of experience, starting with a cluster process in January 2004. And there's no sense wringing our hands about that. In talking to you, we have heard, well, out of the cluster we thought we were okay, but then somewhere up the chain, politics or finances intervened. And one cannot be cynical on an issue as painful as losing one's spiritual home. But this is a story we're very familiar with on the banks of the River Charles. The scale of it, 83%. Did some research, and I'm open to challenge. I don't know of any other case in Catholic America where, in a single administrative action, this number of parishes, percentage or absolute numbers, was ever put on the chopping block. Now, since then, May 2004, yes, we have seen in other dioceses, and I think the most notorious might be in Allentown, PA, where I think something like 53 out of 150 parishes have been told that you're toast. Of the 83 that were announced for suppression, none of this namby-pamby stuff about mergers. In the fullness of time, and I won't bore you with the details, they stopped at about 60, 61, 62, depending on how you count. Why? Oh, by the way, and this is kind of inside Catholic baseball, but it's important. The Congregation for the Clergy in Rome in the summer of '05, and I think Dennis and Jason are very much on this, issued one of these very Roman letters to all U.S. bishops, and without naming names said that certain, this is just about a quote, that certain American bishops had been overusing the canon suppression, the suppression canon, or instead they should have been thinking about mergers. But it was Boston. Boston was the poster child for this. They stopped at around 60. Now, why did they stop? Just go down to the chancery and ask our friend Dick, if you wish. But I will give you my view on why they did in fact stop. Push back from the pews. By the way, until the announcement of May of '04, we were told again and again, as you guys have been told, up to the announcement of 29 suppressions and 41 mergers, which means 70 parishes to be disrupted some way or other. But we were told this is the most thorough, fair, deep, blah, blah, blah process invented by the mind of man. 3 layers of review. Yes, it's going to be painful, but thousands of hours, and let's move along and let's not be diehards. This has been done right. But then after the fact, they changed their mind. And I don't think laugh is the right word. But when I hear that after the fact, in the matter of St. Ignatius and St. Coleman, new facts were brought to my attention, well, what the bleep was going on in all of the months preceding these so-called decisions then. We mobilized 9 vigils, and let's be clear, because in dealing with the press and the secular press in particular, vigil is, people with a candle in the wind, peacefully hoping for something or other. Bananas. This has been civil disobedience. This is 24/7 occupation of the churches, or the buildings, because it's no longer a parish. So the diocese in its correspondence refers to them as the buildings and the vigil sites. 9. I could enumerate them, why bother? There are 2 others that I know of firsthand that were about to do it, and a little advice here and there. Word was leaked to the chancery, and oh, we changed our mind. Good God, no, we're not going to close this other 2. But they ended up with 9. Of the 9, the Archdiocese has voluntarily spared or reopened 4. Plus others that, the 2 that we're going to go into vigil and a few others. So please don't talk to me, either in Boston or in Cleveland, well, if we do it for them, then it's going to set a precedent. Bananas, the precedent has been set. And I believe it's been set here as well. After all of this very careful, studied, deliberative, analytical approach, well, it ain't 29, it's 27 on special this week. Since 4 were voluntarily spared or reopened, 5 remain in vigil as we speak. And Jason, Tony, Noreen have visited. I dare say that you know this, but it is worth repeating and remembering. 4 of those 5 vigil churches have been occupied since October of 2004. Now think about that. Round the clock. Longer than Joseph Ratzinger has been Pope. The days, the weeks, it's in the thousands. The 5th went into vigil in May of '05 because their closing date had been delayed.